Welcome to Build.
It's nice to be here. Thanks for coming. Nice to have you here. Hi.
You have some fans in the audience.
That's so nice. Hello, everyone.
Christian Borle, let's talk about Falsettos.
I'd love to.
Congratulations on this completely gorgeous, beautiful show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just have to address, by the way, the posters. Let's talk about that first. For the photo shoot, I had very short hair because after I left my Shakespeare gig, I cut off all of my hair just for variety's sake. And so I had non-period hair for this photo shoot, so they put a very nice wig on me, which doesn't feature in the show, just so you know. So if you come, don't be disappointed. You are not going to see that wig.
Everybody looks so good on that poster, and I love how they have the arrows that look like a heart and all those different relationships.
We all love each other very much.
Well, that is what comes across in the show. You'd think that the circumstances of the plot don't necessarily point to love. You'd think a lot of those arrows would point away from each other. It's the story. Well, why don't you just give like a couple of sentences of where we start when the show begins?
Falsettos takes place, it starts off in 1979, and I play a man named Marvin who has left his wife and son to be with another man. And this causes ripples, obviously, in all of their lives, but he is intent on making sure that they have their own version of a tight-knit family. And in that era, it's trickier than it is in this area. And that's where conflict ensues.
But love sort of is the through line.
It is, and it ends up conquering all in the least cliche way because Bill Finn wrote it. But love is a huge theme in it, and we are all trying to figure out how to love, what love means, what kind of behavior. We're pretty destructive people, actually. Marvin, interestingly, I'm used to playing kind of like nice guys, and Marvin is not always a nice guy. And his behavior can be pretty awful at times, and so we push the bounds. I think it's a testament to Bill Finn that he wrote this in 1981, and then he wrote Falsetto Land, which is Act 2, in 1990, that it still feels incredibly relevant today.
There was these are two of an original trilogy.
Yes, the first show was called In Trousers.
And what's the story with that one and why it wasn't included as part of this production? Do you know?
I am not up on my In Trousers history. But I will ask Bill and get back to you guys.
All right, cool. Yeah. Well, I'd say tweet me, but you're not on any social media.
That's correct.
And I tweeted today, what should I ask Christian Borle? And several people said, ask him why he's not on Twitter and when he's getting one.
No, I never will. I do think that for all the fun that we have on social media, that it is basically the end of civilization as we know it.
Well, that's quite a statement.
Oh, yeah.
Are you aware that several parts of your anatomy have their own Twitter accounts?
I am, and I think the proof is right there in the pudding. I rest my case.
Yeah, well, I'll keep hoping.
Okay.
One of these days. No?
No, I actually, as someone who values privacy, I don't want everybody knowing my business, and I also don't need to read comments from people weighing in on every little thing that I do. I want to hear what my friends have to say.
Fair enough. You should know, though, that there is so much love for you.
That's so
nice. And I wasn't sure that it could get any deeper than what I saw during Something Rotten for your performance as Shakespeare, but the love of Marvin and your bringing him to life there's nothing in there that I've seen that you wouldn't want to read.
That's very nice. Well, that obviously makes me very happy.
Good.
I don't do what I do so that people will hate it.
But I understand this has been very hard for you. The New York Times published an article about how during the rehearsal process you were going home and crying.
Bawling my
a lot.
No, it was a tricky balance to find because I fell in love with this material when I was a freshman at Carnegie Mellon, and my voice teacher, Gary Klein, gave me the sheet music to What More Can I Say? And it was one of the first composers that made total sense to me. There was something about his music that I understood, even if I was too young to understand the song itself and the material itself, which I was. I was 18 years old, and what do you know? But, and then I saw Falsettos on a trip when I was a sophomore, and I fell in love with it. And I have always wanted desperately to play this part. And so there's so much emotion around the piece itself as just a piece of theater, as a story. But for me personally, I can't believe that I get to do it. So as we were rehearsing it, it was very difficult to navigate all of those emotions. And because James Lapine has been so, his approach to the material was really, he wanted us to take all entertainment out of it in a way and just do it factually, and he didn't want too much acting at all. And he didn't want too much release of emotion. There was a point when we were doing, there's a song at the end of Act 1 called Father to Son, where I've just behaved despicably, and I'm trying to apologize to my son, played by Anthony Rosenthal, who's 12
by the
years
way,
old and is a revelation. He's the sweetest thing on the face of the earth.
His talent is blowing the roof off of the Walter Kerr.
So I get to do this incredible song singing to this incredible child, and I thought it might be interesting to, in the middle of the song, for this son to see his father cry for the first time, because I think we all as human beings know what that bizarre, jarring experience is when this pillar of strength suddenly shows weakness. I thought it would be interesting to show that. But James was really disciplined and was like, we don't want it yet. No tears, no emotion, no crying. Maybe at the end of the whole thing, and maybe. So I was having all these feelings, and I wasn't able to let them out in any way. And I was also exhausted by rehearsals. And so like once a week, I would get home on a Sunday night after a long week, and I would just find myself in my kitchen just letting it all out. But now I've figured out how to navigate it, so there's less home crying, as I call it.
Well, I'm glad that you let yourself do that. I think that...
You have to, otherwise you go crazy.
Well, I'm glad you didn't go crazy.
Yeah.
This is your 10th Broadway show.
That's
and
crazy.
You, I feel, are best known for these huge, over-the-top comedic roles, most recently as William Shakespeare in Something Rotten, for which you won your second Tony Award.
That was exciting.
And
Thanks.
the first one, also a really over-the-top comedic role in Peter and the Starcatcher. And I wonder whether there's some kind of relief in taking a step back into something a little more subtle as an actor, and what the differences are in your prep. I assume you weren't going home and crying during the rehearsal process of those shows.
For different reasons.
I mean, when you have to smash your hand that many times.
Right.
But can you talk a little bit about the difference between playing essentially someone who is cartoonish and someone who is so human?
Yes, I am gratified to be able to do a role like this, particularly after those last two. You do, as, sorry to sound pretentious, I'm going to use the word artist, but as an artist, you want to be seen as, I think, everyone wants to be seen as versatile, I think. And I also am happy that people can see that I was over the top in those shows because I was playing the man who would become Captain Hook, and then I was playing Shakespeare that everyone hates because he's an obnoxious rock star. And so there was something that was required of those two roles, I think. You don't do someone who's going to be Captain Hook and bring... We all have an expectation about what Captain Hook is and will be. So I felt, on some level, a responsibility to take it to that place. And also Peter and the Starcatcher was such a specific thing. We were playing in our own kind of little sandbox, and I thought it required a little bit of boundary pushing in that way. So it's nice to, I think the last kind of human three-dimensional person that I played on stage was Emmett in Legally Blonde. And I said...
What about Angels in America?
Yes, that had its own set of challenges.
I mean... That
Yes.
show wrecked me.
Yeah.
That your performance in particular.
Thanks.
And
It
I
almost
see
wrecked
some
me,
echoes
too.
of that in this show as well, and
Yeah.
not just because they're both like AIDS plays.
Right.
But-
It is nice to be, I have to say, on the other side of the hospital bed in this one. It's I got myself sick playing Pryor because I wanted to look emaciated.
Wow.
And so, because there's a scene in part 2 where I had to strip and look sick, and so I just basically stopped eating, which is not a condition to be in when you're doing an 8.5-hour play. So I actually look back at myself and think you were pretty stupid. So But it was a fascinating journey, and again, another honor to be part of Tony Kushner's play. I couldn't believe that even happened. And on some level, it's a blur, but that's probably because of the low blood sugar. But so it is not. There's very little prep that is involved now with Falsettos. All we do is get to the theater and we catch up with each other and laugh with each other. And I have to say, what's been really a nice surprise about Falsettos is that we don't, as a group of people, we don't walk around backstage carrying the weight of the material with us, or it's very lighthearted. We're having a lot of fun. We're laughing backstage a lot.
I'm so glad to hear that. I was like worried for you.
No, it's really light. I mean, there's certain moments that just lock in because you're singing this material, and obviously the show goes where it goes. But it doesn't require any kind of. I don't have to get into that headspace, which is a relief. I can't say that the same was true with Pryor. So it's nice to be on the other side.
Well, I didn't mean to distract you from talking about Legally Blonde.
No, I didn't.
I mean, I
just
love that show, and I think I saw it 6 or 7 times
I love doing it. Yeah.
on Broadway, and I DVR'd the MTV production of it, and I still listen to it all the time. And I actually sometimes have to stop listening to the cast album because it gets in my head so relentlessly.
It's catchy. They wrote amazing songs. I love that show. I love doing it.
Well, I'm glad that we have, a recorded history of that show. So, I want to talk about your next role, your 11th Broadway show, which is already in the works. You're going to be playing Willy Wonka.
Yes, that's surreal. Thanks. Well, hold your applause. I don't know. I'm thrilled, obviously, and honored, and a little scared. But I am so excited to be working with Jack O'Brien. We've worked together on readings and labs and developmental things and have become friends, but I've never worked with him on a full-blown Broadway musical before, and I think he's a genius. And the way he's approaching this material, because he is coming on board as a director, he's the new director of the show, too. So we're kind of taking this musical that was produced on the West End, and I think is still playing. It may be closing soon, but it's still there. And we're going to kind of reconfigure it and re-explore the material for New York, and it's very exciting. And we have Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman writing original songs. There are going to be songs from the movie as well in it. But I'm only marginally daunted by doing a role that was set so beautifully in stone by Gene Wilder. And I was so sad to hear the news of his dying earlier this year. And the only relief is that he won't be coming to see the show, because I don't think
he would have loved you in it, I'm sure.
I don't know.
Just from having seen the promo video that's circulating right now, I can already tell you're going to be perfect in that role.
Which
so no
isn't
pressure.
Me, by the way. That isn't me in the
It
video.
isn't?
I don't know who that very graceful young man is.
Well, whoever that guy is, he's awesome.
He did a very nice job. That is not representative of my Willy Wonka walk, though.
Have you started preparing for that role at all, or are you too entrenched in Marvin right now?
We did a lab this summer where we got together for a month, and we put together Josh Bergas, who's choreographing it, who we met in 1996 doing West Side Story.
Who did you play in West Side Story?
I was Riff. He was Baby John. We were very young. And now he is an Emmy Award-winning choreographer.
And you're a Tony Award-winning actor.
Yes, very nice. And so it's really exciting to work with him again. He set 5 numbers for everyone to kind of like take a look at, for the design team to see kind of like what it's going to look like. And then we read through the current iteration of the script, which is very exciting. And so we've had discussions. I have sung the songs. I'm trying to figure out what to do with him now.
With Willy?
Yeah. Because they're obviously big shoes to fill, and I don't want to do an impersonation of Gene Wilder or Johnny Depp. And it's a puzzle.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to trust them to point me in the right direction.
So you mentioned that Scott Whitman and Mark Shaman are going to be writing the music, which will represent a reunion for you.
Yes, they were the glorious songwriters on Smash.
That's correct.
Yes, they were.
Which is, only was around for a couple of seasons, but is so beloved. And we were just talking backstage about how it really holds up. And
I'm glad to hear that.
You were so fantastic on that show as
Thanks.
the composer Tom Levitt.
Thank you very much.
Talk to us a little bit about Smash.
Smash was a gift that came along. I'd never really done any TV work, and TV work is so fancy and different and fun, and I met an amazing group of people, most of whom I still keep in touch with, so it was really fun to do. Obviously, it was interesting to do a show about musical theater, having been so entrenched in the musical theater. And I think the one thing, the thing that, looking back on it now, it was such a labor of love, and it was so hard. Actually, the thing that I think about most is Catherine McPhee and Megan Hilty, who were so wonderful with each other. When you think about like the history of like two divas playing opposite each other, where that could have gone, both in the show and in real life, they were such incredible sisters to each other, and they supported each other the entire time. But they would be rehearsing, learning one number, rehearsing another number, shooting a third number, and maybe even recording a demo for a fourth number over the course of a single day.
Wow.
Every day. And they never complained, and they just cranked out, and Mark and Scott, cranking out songs that had to, like, had to get through the whole network TV process of scrutiny. If everybody at every level had a say about all of this material that they were turning out. So I think they developed really, really thick skins when you're putting yourself out there like that. But of course I laugh. I look back at the whole thing, and some of the verisimilitude about what it is to be behind the scenes of musical theater is hilarious to me. But I do wish that they had just gotten us all together and said, give us your most dramatic, real-life musical theater backstage stories. Because the things that have happened to me and my friends and my colleagues and my peers are so much more hilarious and dramatic than anything that they kind of came up with, if you know what I'm saying.
You have just opened the door, sir.
I realize that.
Give me your craziest, wacky, behind-the-scenes story that's stranger than fiction.
Well, actually, one of the, I'll spare you the details, but...
I want the details, come on.
Not only to protect people, but, we wear microphones. And once you put them on, they don't come off. And there's somebody who has, headphones, that is a technician making sure that all the mics are working, who at any point can listen in to conversations.
And these are mics that are like strapped to your head.
Right. And I have to say, the reason the story is interesting is because this never happens, and because the people that I have worked with are are people of incredible integrity, and there's so much trust backstage. But it did happen once, many, many, many moons ago, where someone abused that power of like listening in and created a bit of a stink because they let an ex-girlfriend listen into a boyfriend's microphone in a dressing room. And so there is a thing in the theater sometimes where when you're really saying something, you cover up your microphone.
That really happened?
It did. It was not pretty.
Were you the person who was listening to?
Oh, no, I was but a witness. No.
How did they even find out that happened?
It just all came out.
Wow.
Anyway. So yeah, drama, real life drama. Didn't see that on Smash.
The whole thing about Smash where people were like, that's not how it really happens. It was like, do you watch Grey's Anatomy and expect that that's the way an actual emergency room works? I think the difference is that it isn't doctors acting the characters of doctors, where you have musical theater actors playing musical theater actors.
That's right.
But I wish that show had lasted.
Oh, yes, me too. I loved every single second of it.
I still, wish that the stage production would happen. One of my great heartbreaks is that I didn't get to see the one benefit performance of it.
That was very exciting.
And I wish that you had sung more in that show.
They didn't really want me to. It was fine. That was the night after the Tony Awards, and I was very, 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 I'll just use the word tired. So I was happy that my commitment was minimal.
You have great relationships with your cast. Is it true that you had a game with Brian Darcy James where you used to find creative ways to hide in his dressing room?
Yes, this is true.
What was that about?
Well, he was the hardest working person in Something Rotten, and I had the easiest track in Something Rotten. I would sit in my dressing room for the first 45 minutes of the show and read while he was carrying that show on his very handsome shoulders. So there was a moment where he would come off stage after working very hard, and I would just try to find places in his dressing room to hide, to scare him. And I came up with some really interesting and contorted poses to hide. And I was mostly successful. He has not a lot of long-term memory, it turns out. But you also have to know how to pace it out. Like, you don't do it every day. You do it once every 4 shows.
The other thing that I'm hoping that you'll either confirm or deny, is it true that your Tony Awards are flanking a Boba Fett bust on your mantle?
That is apocryphal.
Oh.
Yeah.
But you are a huge Star Wars fan.
Huge, yes.
And comic books and
All of it still. Yes.
Yeah. If you could star in any comic book musical, what would it be? Who would you want to be?
Comic book musical. Oh.
Yeah, if you were gonna take your favorite comic book character and make it into a Broadway show.
This feels like a real gotcha question.
You act like you've never thought about it before.
No, I haven't. I'm gonna get back to you. I'm gonna get back.
All right,
to you.
tweet it at me.
All right, yeah.
We have time for some questions from the audience.
Great.
Hey, Christian, congrats on Falsettos and everything.
Thanks.
I was wondering if you have a morning routine or a bedtime routine, because I know I check Twitter as soon as I wake up and before I go to bed.
The end of times.
I make coffee. I do. I have the reason that I love theater is I am a man of routine, and so I would say, does Family Circus still exist? The cartoon Family Circus,
The
comic strip.
comic strip?
Yeah.
I don't know.
There was a comic strip called Family Circus, and very often there would be a single panel, and you would see a dotted line following one of the children around their daily activity, and then you'd see the potted plant smashed, and then you'd see them getting into hijinks over here. I would say that my life is very similar to a Family Circus cartoon in that I wake up and I immediately go and I turn on the hot water, and then I go and I open the shades, and then I go and I put the coffee in the thing, and then I open my computer and I check my phone, and then it is very much like that. I like a regiment. And then at night, it's in reverse. It's not coffee, it's bourbon.
Hi.
4 roses if you feel like sending any over to AOL Bill via Messenger.
We'll drop it off the Walter Kerr.
Yes,
4
ma'am.
roses bourbon.
Hi, I'm seeing Falsettos tonight. Very excited. I've seen you just about in everything that you've done. I happen to be sitting next to Jack O'Brien on the opening night of Taming of the Shrew, and he told me he was doing your next show, Willy Wonka. He said, guess who's starring in it? And I said, your name. And I thought it was the greatest homage to the original movie. So I was just wondering if you were going to go back, you started to mention about it, to the original source, the Roald Dahl book, or if you were going to kind of take back and forth with the 2 characters who've already played on film.
First of all, thank you.
I when he said your name.
Well, that's
so.
very sweet. He tends to have a twinkle in his eye.
Yes,
He's a
he
magical man. I read the book when we were doing the lab, and I found it to be. I was a huge Roald Dahl fan growing up, and I was more of a James and the Giant Peach kid. But in terms of character building, it's not informative. It was very, other than a couple of little descriptions, physical descriptions. It's just kind of, the book moves in a very fast, it's very short. I don't know if you've read it recently, but it's very incident-based, and, Charlie gets the ticket, and then he goes to the thing, and then they just start knocking off the kids one by one. But in terms of, looking for, behavioral clues, there's not a lot there for Willy. And I, in thinking about Gene Wilder, who as a performer moves me so much. If you get a chance, Google Gene Wilder outtakes from Young Frankenstein. And to watch him transition from acting and then breaking, there's no division. He was just completely himself and present and having an incredible time with these people. And I just find that fascinating and delightful, and he's a true genius. But when I think about what he did with Willy Wonka, he was very much himself, actually. We remember him as having this kind of menace, and it's kind of this bizarre character. But he's very gentle in a way, and very much himself. And so that's kind of where I'm starting, is trying to just be an actual person who has been, by chance, living alone for 19 years in a chocolate factory, with Oompa Loompas as his only friend. So there's going to be some eccentricity to it, but I'm trying to figure out like what that really comes from. So we'll see if I succeed or fail. Oh, and I'll have a top hat.
We have time for one more.
Hi.
Was I not supposed to say Google in AOL, by the way? Was that a faux pas? I don't even know the...
You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Was there a moment or show that got you interested in pursuing theater or acting?
Yeah, I actually remember I went on a trip with my family to Europe, and we were in London and saw a West End production of West Side Story, and being just completely captivated and blown away by that amazing show, obviously, and also totally confused by the fact that they served ice cream at intermission. But that's neither here nor there.
What theater was this?
It was something in the West End in London. I don't know. I don't remember. I was too young.
I'm going to go there.
Yeah. No, but that's what they do. They've got the ice cream situation. I think it was probably West Side Story, which was a great place to start. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, are there any dream roles that you have not gotten to play? And if you could revive any character from the theatrical canon, is there any that you've always just kind of had your eye on?
Yeah.
And what is it?
Well, I'm trying to make it happen, so I'm not gonna say. Be mysterious about it in an irritating way, but yeah, I think it would be a head scratcher for people, but I have some ideas, so we'll see.
All right. Well, on that mysterious note, Christian Borle, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
being
so
here.
much.
Everyone go
Lovely.
see Falsettos. It's truly
Thank
remarkable. And hopefully we'll see you back here for Willy Wonka.
That'd be nice.